So, Chainlink just launched real time stock price feeds on chain. Apple, Tesla, Nvidia, all streaming live to smart contracts. And honestly, my first thought was, why?
That's actually the right reaction, because the obvious question is, who needs this?
Right? Like, we already have stock prices, they're everywhere. Yahoo Finance is free. So, what's the actual unlock here?
The unlock isn't access to the data. It's what you can do with it once it's on chain. Think about it. Right now, if you want to build a financial product that responds to stock prices, you're building it in the traditional system. Banks, brokers, clearinghouses, settlement delays.
Okay, so this is about programmability.
Exactly. You can now write a smart contract that says, if Tesla drops 5%, automatically rebalance my portfolio. And that executes instantly, permissionlessly, without calling your broker or waiting for market hours.
But wait, the stock market closes. These feeds are real time during market hours. But what happens at night or on weekends?
They freeze. The last price just sits there until markets reopen, which is fine for most use cases, but it does create this weird hybrid situation where you're bringing traditional market constraints onto a 24/7 blockchain.
That feels like a fundamental tension. Crypto is supposed to be always on, global, permissionless, but now we're importing these legacy market rhythms.
Yeah, and it gets weirder because these aren't direct feeds from exchanges. They're going through something called FinSymbol, which is basically a data aggregator. So you've got equities data flowing through a Web2 platform, then onto Chainlink's Oracle network, then onto blockchains.
So there's still a centralized choke point.
There is. Now, Chainlink's Oracle network itself is decentralized. Multiple nodes are verifying the data, so no single point of failure there. But the upstream source is FinSymbol. If that goes down, or if there's a dispute about pricing, that's a problem.
This is making me think about the whole Oracle problem differently. Like, we talk about oracles as this solved issue, but you're really just moving the trust assumption.
Exactly. You're not eliminating trust, you're distributing it and making it more transparent, which is still valuable. Instead of trusting one institution, you're trusting a network of nodes that have economic incentives to be honest, but you're still trusting something upstream.
So let's talk use cases, because I can imagine a few things, like tokenized stock indices or DeFi protocols that let you borrow against equity positions. But what's actually being built right now?
Honestly, not much yet. This just launched, but the potential is there for things like synthetic equities, tokens that track stock prices without you actually owning the stock, or prediction markets that settle based on real equity performance, or cross-collateralization, where your crypto position is backed by exposure to traditional equities.
The synthetic equity thing is interesting, but also, isn't that just a CFD? Like, contracts for difference have existed forever.
It is, but it's a CFD that settles on-chain, transparently, with no broker in the middle taking a cut or deciding who gets access. That's the difference. Whether that matters to people is another question.
Right, and there's also the regulatory side, because the moment you're dealing with equities, even synthetic ones, you're in SEC territory. Chainlink isn't providing financial advice, they're just providing data, but the people using this data are definitely going to run into compliance issues.
Yeah, and that's where I think a lot of these experiments will hit a wall. Like, you can build a permissionless synthetic stock trading platform, but good luck running that without getting shut down in the US. So realistically, this might end up being most useful in jurisdictions with lighter regulation, or for institutional players who already have the compliance infrastructure.
Or it becomes another thing where US users are geo-fenced out and everyone else gets to play.
Probably, which is frustrating, but also just the reality of building in this space right now.
Okay, so I want to zoom out for a second. What does this say about where crypto is going? Because it feels like we're in this phase where the industry is trying to bridge into traditional finance rather than replace it.
I think that's right, and I actually don't think that's a bad thing. The revolutionary narrative, we're going to replace banks and stocks and everything, that was always going to take decades, if it happens at all. What's more realistic is that blockchains become infrastructure for financial rails. Faster settlement, more transparency, composability between different systems.
So less bank killer, more bank upgrade.
Yeah, and equities data is a good example of that. You're not replacing the stock market. You're making it easier to build things on top of stock market data.
Although there is one piece of this I want to push back on, which is the composability argument. Because yes, in theory, having stock prices on-chain means you can combine them with DeFi protocols in interesting ways. But in practice, liquidity is so fragmented, and gas fees on Ethereum are still high enough that a lot of these use cases don't make economic sense yet.
That's fair. I mean, Chainlink is launching this on multiple chains, Arbitrum, Base, others. So the gas fee issue is getting better. But you're right that liquidity is still the bottleneck. Like, you can build a synthetic equity protocol, but if no one's using it, it doesn't matter how elegant a design is.
Right, and that's where I think the real test is. Because Chainlink has been around for years, they have a ton of integrations, but how many of those integrations are actually seeing real usage versus just proof of concept demos?
Honestly, I think most are still in the proof of concept phase. But that's not unique to Chainlink. That's just where DeFi is right now. There's a lot of infrastructure that exists before the applications justify it.
Which is a bet on the future.
It is. And maybe that bet pays off. Maybe it doesn't. But at least with something like equities data, you can see a path to real demand. People understand stocks. They understand wanting exposure to stocks. That's a lot more intuitive than like synthetic derivatives on DeFi governance tokens.
Okay, fair. So where does something like Internet Computer fit into this? Because ICP has its own Oracle infrastructure, right?
It does, but it's architecturally different. ICP uses something called HTTPS outcalls, which lets smart contracts query external APIs directly without needing a separate Oracle network. So in theory, a canister on ICP could just call FinSemble's API itself.
So why would you use Chainlink if ICP can do that natively?
Well, there are trade-offs. Chainlink's approach is more decentralized. You've got multiple independent nodes aggregating data, so there's less risk of a single point of failure. With ICP's HTTPS outcalls, you're still trusting the external API, but the query itself is happening at the subnet level, which is decentralized. So it's not like one node is lying, it's more like, is the data source itself reliable?
So it's a different trust model.
Yeah, and for something like equities data where FinSemble is already the upstream source, ICP's approach might actually be simpler. You're not adding an extra layer, you're just querying the API directly from on-chain, but you lose the redundancy that Chainlink provides.
What about the 24/7 thing? Because ICP is always on, right? Does that help with the market hours problem?
No, because the problem isn't the blockchain, it's the data source. Stock markets still close. So even on ICP, if you're querying equities data, you're going to hit the same issue where prices freeze outside market hours. The only way around that is to create truly native on-chain markets that trade 24/7, which that's a whole different conversation.
And probably not happening anytime soon.
Probably not.
All right, so let's bring this home. If you're a developer or founder watching this space, what should you actually take away from Chainlink launching equities feeds?
I think the takeaway is that the infrastructure is starting to exist for hybrid financial products, things that live on-chain but interact with traditional markets. Whether that's useful depends entirely on what you're building. If you want to create a DeFi protocol that rebalances based on stock performance, now you can. If you want to build a prediction market for earnings reports, you have the data for that.
But the demand side is still the big question mark.
Totally. And I think that's going to be the story of 2025 in crypto. We have so much infrastructure now. We have layer 2s, we have oracles, we have interoperability protocols. The question is, what are people actually going to use?
And will they care that it's on-chain, or will they just want the product to work?
Exactly. And honestly, I think the most successful projects will be the ones where the user doesn't even think about the blockchain. They just know they're getting a better, faster, cheaper service than what exists today.
Which brings us full circle to the stock price feeds, because at the end of the day, this is infrastructure. It's not the product, it's what enables the product. And whether it matters depends on whether someone builds something people actually want on top of it.
That's the bet Chainlink is making, and we'll see if it pays off.
All right, that's a good place to leave it. Thanks for breaking this down.
Anytime.